What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do a rapid fire Q&A from my Instagram. We're going to answer questions around how often should you be stretching. I've recently gotten very close to my middle splits and I've gotten my front splits. I want to tell you how often you can stretch in order to achieve something similar. We're going to be talking about the ideal rest time in between supersets. Going to be talking about how to improve your cardiovascular health without running and without jumping. Going to talk about how the difference in weight training between training for fat loss and training for muscle growth. And finally, we're also going to talk about how to build muscle even when you're in a calorie deficit. All right, I hope you like the video. If you do, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you don't already. Let's get into the video. Okay, we're gonna go in order. We're gonna do this rapid fire. Mateo to Tony, is stretching important every day when you do gym? This is, I think, the most common misconception when it comes to stretching. And as you've seen on the screen, my middle splits, I'm pretty damn close to getting. Started off, it was not good at all. And my front split started off not that good either. And now I'm fully on the ground with my front splits. Most people ask me, which stretches am I doing every day to achieve this goal? I'm not stretching every day. I do intense mobility work, keyword being intense, 3 times a week. That's it. 3 times a week. And I treat my mobility work like I treat my strength training. And I know this is very difficult to comprehend if you've never done this type of stretching or mobility work before. But the way that I want you to think about it is effective mobility training is strength training just simply in longer ranges of motion or when your muscles are fully stretched. So think about this. Let's say you're going to get into a front split right now. Go as far as you can go in a front split safely. You're going to feel a lot of tension on your muscle. You're gonna feel like that your hamstrings tighten up. Maybe you'll feel your hip flexors tighten up. If you want, you could try it right now. Try and get into a front split. Don't push too hard, but feel like you'll feel the tension in your hamstrings. Then if you tried to hold that without supporting yourself up, your muscles would contract in order to hold yourself in that position. That contraction is strength training. Now, there are ways to do this in which you can train your muscles to get stronger in these longer positions so that you will be able to eventually get more flexibility in these positions. Think about this. When someone dies before rigor mortis sets in, like they're all over the place. You can manipulate their body however you want. Doesn't matter how tight they were when they were alive. As soon as they're dead, they no longer have any brain waves anymore. You can do whatever you want with their body. Why is that? It's because mobility and flexibility is not a muscle tightness thing. It's actually a neuromuscular thing. Your brain is trying to prevent you from getting injured. So what we need to do is teach your brain that you are strong enough to hold these lengthened positions so that it will give you access to this range. Long story short, you don't need to do mobility work every day. In fact, I don't think you should. Effective mobility work is done a couple times a week, very intensely. All right, next question is from Trembly and ... How much time is ideal between each exercise of a superset? It really depends, but for all intents and purposes, we're just going to talk about, let's say your main goal is strength, generally about 30 to 60 seconds between the first to second exercise, and then at least 2 to 3 minutes from the second exercise back to the first exercise. So you don't need full rest from the first to the second because usually a superset has opposing muscle groups. So you do, like, for example, a push-up and a row. They're opposing muscle groups in a superset. A paired set would be you're doing the same muscle groups and that would be a different rest period. Either way, about 30 to 60 seconds in between the first 2 exercises, and then before you go back to the first exercise from the second one, at least 2 to 3 minutes. All right, next question. How to improve cardiovascular health without running or jumping? This is from Anna.byco ... Super simple. You could do literally anything that sustains a moderately high heart rate for a significant period of time that isn't running or jumping. So for example, you could walk. You could walk with a weighted vest if you want to get your heart rate up a little bit more. You could walk on an incline. You could go on a bike. You could use a rowing machine. You could use a Concept 2 rower. You could go on a hike. You could go swimming. You could go rock climbing. You could do anything for a sustained period of time that increases your heart rate. And also, I should add the caveat, because if it's just a sustained heart rate for a long period of time, you might be able to work in there like, oh, like a scary movie. I could just sit on my butt and watch a scary movie and my heart rate's gonna be going. It's not just that. It's a sustained heart rate with physical output. Because especially when it comes to cardiovascular health, it's not just your heart. It's not just your lungs. Your muscles do play a role in it as well. But the main thing is your muscles shouldn't be the thing that's fatiguing you or preventing you from keep going. Like walking or incline walking or cycling is good because you can go at a relatively low intensity to the point where your muscles aren't fatiguing, but your heart is. If you're just sitting down on the couch and watching a scary movie, there's no muscular involvement. It's just cardiovascular. So in order to get the most benefits, you want to do something, anything that gets your body moving for a sustained period of time while keeping your heart rate at least moderately elevated. All right, next question from Sharp1195. Do you have to weight train differently for muscle gain and fat loss? Great question. No, you do not at all. There are two completely different methodologies for what you want to accomplish. From a fat loss perspective, the only way to lose fat is to eat in a calorie deficit. Period. End of story. If you don't know how many calories you need to eat in order to have a calorie deficit in order to lose fat, I have a free calorie calculator. The link is in the description of the video. It will tell you exactly how many calories and how much protein to eat in order to lose fat sustainably and effectively. As long as you're in a calorie deficit, you lose fat. The issue is many people think when they need to lose fat, they need to do high intensity interval training, they need to do cardio and circuits, they need to increase their cardio and decrease their strength training. That's not accurate. All you need to do from a fat loss perspective is eat in a calorie deficit. From a muscle growth perspective, that's much more about the intensity with which you approach your strength training and specifically how much your muscles are being taxed in each set. So the way to think about it is, are you finishing your sets and is the muscle not overly fatigued? If you're finishing a set and it's not difficult, like in this case, doing bicep curls, if you could just do this over and over and over again, you're not gonna stimulate muscle growth. If you're failing or if you're fatiguing enough in your sets from cardiovascular, if your heart is pumping, if you're out of breath, but your muscles aren't fatigued, you're not gonna build muscle. The way you build muscle is by fatiguing the muscle, by placing enough stress on that muscle so that it can't do at least 3 or 4 more reps. You don't need to train to failure, but relatively close to it so that by the time you get to the end of the set, it's very difficult to complete another rep. All right, final question from Sand Aaron. Do you have any videos dedicated to the topic of building muscle in a calorie deficit? I do, but I'll answer it for you right now. Can you build muscle in a calorie deficit? I'll say this. Yes, you can, but what if someone asked you, can you win a fight if the other person has a gun and you have a knife? You can, but it's way more difficult. It is much more challenging. If you've only got a knife and the other person has a gun, I'd prefer to reverse it. I'd rather have the gun and then have the knife. Now, obviously you could win, but it's a much more difficult situation to be in. Same thing with building muscle in a calorie deficit. Can you build muscle in a calorie deficit? Sure, yeah, you can, and especially, it'll be much easier if you're a beginner, you've never really strength trained before. It'll be much easier if you're coming back after a long layoff. Maybe you got sick, maybe you took a couple of years off of strength training, now you're coming back, so you get these like newbie gains. If you're a more of a seasoned lifter, even more of an intermediate lifter, you've been lifting for like at least 2 or 3 years, and you've been consistent with it, it's just gonna be way harder. Your energy is gonna be down, it's gonna be much more difficult. I mean, the amount of muscle you can grow after 3, 4, or 5 years of consistent strength training naturally, by naturally I mean without anabolic steroids, the amount of muscle is just, it gets very, very, very small. And that's in ideal circumstances. And in a calorie deficit is not an ideal circumstance. So yes, you can, but it will be much easier and much more effective if at the very least you're in caloric maintenance, if not a slight caloric surplus. Now, you could go into a big caloric surplus, but that's when you end up adding a lot of extra fat. Generally, when I'm working with my inner circle members, I recommend either being in maintenance or a slight caloric surplus. That's where you're gonna get the best bang for your buck from a muscle growth perspective with minimal, if any, extra fat gain. Now, if you want help with your own training, with your nutrition, you can join my inner circle. I have a whole app. As soon as you join, we will send you the link to download the app. Workouts every single month. We have brand new workouts, 3 and 4 times a week options. We have a whole calorie tracker where we'll tell you how many calories to eat, how much protein to eat, how much fiber to eat. We have a consistency calendar. We've got exercise video tutorials. It's a one-stop shop for all of your health and fitness goals. What I think is the most important here is that this app is not for bodybuilders. This app is not for people who just want to get huge and jacked. This app is for men and women who want to feel good and perform amazingly well, for people who want to live a long, healthy, happy life, who want to incorporate fitness into their life without fitness taking over their entire life, but you probably still want to be badass as well. Maybe you want to be able to do a chin-up or multiple chin-ups or weighted chin-ups. Maybe you want to be able to do your first push-up or 10 push-ups or 50 push-ups in a row. Maybe you want to squat heavy, deadlift heavy. Maybe you want to just get out of pain, get out of back pain, get out of knee pain. You just want to move and function really well. Maybe you want your kids to be like, holy shit, like my parent is a badass. That's who this is for. If you're a professional bodybuilder, you just want to get as big as possible, definitely not for you. But if you'd like to be an effective athlete, even if you're not competing in any athletics, but you want to move and feel like an athlete, this is the program program for you, I'll put the link in the description of the video. Having said all of that, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you don't already. Have a wonderful week. I'll talk to you soon.